Hi, I'm Jade. I'm 34, and I've been a Christian since I was 7 years old. Things just gone to sleep. But I was never baptised until recently. In 2013, I moved to Perth from Bustleton to care for my nana through her final 5 stages of her battle with cancer. At the time, I felt God telling me to go, so I went. It was the hardest job I ever had to do, but not the hardest season I've ever walked through. When my nana passed away, I decided to stay in Perth and get back to my life as normal. But life wasn't normal anymore, and neither was I. But I pretended for 5 years that I was. I told everyone that I didn't need church. I told everyone that God and I were great, and I told everyone I was fine. I became customer service Jade, act as you must, not as you feel, and get on with the task at hand. Until one day in March of 2018, when all the walls I'd been building up came spectacularly crashing down. That night I called a close friend of mine and told him everything I'd been holding in for the last 5 years. I told him that I was angry at God for what he'd asked me to do 5 years earlier. I told him that I was angry that I'd done exactly what God asked me to do, that 5 years later I was still single and still hurting. When was it my turn for love and happiness? Basically, I was waiting for my payoff. I was angry that my nana's life ended the way that it did and that I couldn't do anything to help. My friend wasn't expecting that call that night. I'd told him that I didn't want to do life anymore. Couldn't see the point. Sorry. I just told him I didn't want to do this anymore. For 2 hours he listened and he assured me that I'd done everything that I could for my nana. He told me I did everything God asked me to do. He told me everything was going to be okay and that I wasn't going anywhere because together we'd get through this stuff. That night was a tipping point for me for the next 14 months. I went into a downward spiral of anxiety and depression. I shut everyone out. I stopped eating. I stopped cooking, which had always brought me great joy. I stopped talking and laughing and smiling. I'd come home from work and go straight to bed exhausted from holding myself together all day. I tried to put on a brave face, but the truth was I was a mess. Everyone knew it, and no one knew how to help. That same friend stuck close. Every day at work, he watched my every move, monitored every anxiety attack, and he knew when they were happening before I did. On the March long weekend of this year in Bustleton, Sunday morning, Mum and Dad asked me if I wanted to go to church with them. I reluctantly agreed, but I was adamant that I wasn't going to talk to anyone. So I went in and I carried as much stuff in my hands as I possibly could because I didn't want anyone to hug me. There was no way I was going to be hugged. We walked in and Mum finds a seat right in front of Michelle Smoker and her parents. Michelle was the only person from church that I had for about 3 months actually wanting to speak to and actually wanting to hug. After the service, Michelle tells me about these friends of hers that are starting a church in Osborne Park. And I said, no, I don't really do church anymore. God and I are great. I don't need church. Michelle sends me the details anyway, and we arranged to catch up a few weeks later for lunch. After our lunch, I decided to come to the Everlife Easter service, and we walked in. When I walked in, it was dark except for the stage lights, and I thought, no one can see me cry. No one can see me at all. Then I noticed that there was no crazy Christian standing at the door, throwing their hand out at me and handing me a visitor's pack. I thought, that's all right. And then the band started and I was sold. Reckless Love played that day and I played it on repeat for a week before I went to Bali. During this trip, I had lengthy one-sided chats with God regarding my anxiety, my job, and my life. And finally, one night at 2 a.m. on a sleepless night, in desperation, I cried out to God, I don't want to do this anymore. Well, at 9:30 the next morning, while I was on the massage table of all places, God spoke to me more sternly and clearly than I've ever heard him before. And he said, why can't you see yourself as I see you? Why can't you see yourself as I see you? At that moment, I burst into tears and I knew that voice as if it was my own dad. What I realised in that moment is that I've spoken horrible things about myself and over myself. I'd believe those things and let other people convince me of things that aren't true about myself. I'd convince myself I had to forgive myself for that. I had to ask God's forgiveness for the way that I've treated myself for the last 27 years. I never saw my own beauty the way that He does, and I realised I never fully gave myself to Him to be able to trust Him completely with my life. I didn't love myself as He loved me. I never felt good enough for God. Even after 27 years of hearing it and speaking it, I never believed it about myself until that moment when God yelled at me. And that's why I never wanted to be baptised, because I never felt good enough. God had kicked down my walls and tore down lies coming after me because of His overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love. I returned from Bali and went down to Bustleton to Mum and Dad's, where I asked them to baptise me at the beach. I've been, for the most part, anxiety-free ever since. I heard my words in Bali. Now when I do feel some kind of weirdness, I know that it's either an attack from the enemy because I'm about to do something that he doesn't like, or because it's my spirit discerning that something else is at play. But I know it's not anxiety because God took that burden from me. I returned to Everlife the next Sunday after being baptised, and I've been coming every week and loving it. I love running the coffee cart, and it's bringing me newfound joy. My week now revolves around what I'm cooking for Thursday night at dinner party at Jess and Shafan's place, and it's helped me rediscover my love of cooking again. My workmates ask me every Monday and every Friday, how was church and how was dinner party? And for the first time ever, my faith is now a part of my work life. My colleagues are interested because they're seeing how much joy it's bringing me. In looking back, I now see that God positioned me at specific moments for His purposes to be fulfilled. What I've also come to realise is that He also placed people to walk alongside me when I didn't think that I needed church or a church family to be my safe haven during those dark seasons. There were times where there could be no doubt that it was Him working things out so that I had someone walking every step of my day so that I was cared for, both at work in my friend and at home in my sister. Don't underestimate what God's doing here or what He's doing or where He's placed you. If the last 6 months have shown me anything from where I was 18 months ago, it's that God never gives up. He never stops fighting for us. He always has a purpose for where He's placed us and who He's placed us with. This growing Everlife family is the start of a new season, and it's an exciting season. But man, I wish I had this home 18 months ago, because life here with you guys is so much better. God sees us as His precious child. Psalms 139:14 says, I praise you, God, because I'm wonderfully and fearfully made. Your works are wonderful, and I know that full well. As we see ourselves as God sees us, we become free. Thank you.